What's up, big perm? I mean, big worm?
If you ain't got my money, I'm killing you.
Friday isn't just a funny movie, it's a whole vibe. Released in 1995, this cult classic starring Ice Cube and Chris Tucker has become a favorite for generations. However, even if you've watched it 100 times, there's a good chance you missed some crazy behind-the-scenes stuff. From unexpected casting choices to real-life drama on set, here are 20 weird facts you probably didn't know about Friday. Number 20. The entire movie was shot in just 20 days.
I'm used to stealing. Get in, get out.
One of the most surprising facts about Friday is that the entire movie was shot in just 20 days. That is less than 3 weeks to film a full-length comedy that went on to become one of the most beloved cult classics of the 1990s. Most Hollywood movies, especially ones with large casts and outdoor scenes, take months to complete. However, with a tiny budget and a tight schedule, the cast and crew behind Friday pulled it off in record time. The reason the shoot was so short comes down to money. With only $3.5 million to work with, the filmmakers had to make every single day count. They could not afford reshoots or delays, and they definitely did not have the luxury of shutting down streets or building big studio sets. Everything had to move fast. Most of the movie takes place on one block in south-central Los Angeles, and nearly all the scenes were filmed in or around 2 houses and a small convenience store. Due to the fast pace, the actors had to be locked in. There was very little room for mistakes. Many performances that appear relaxed and natural were actually filmed under pressure with very little rehearsal. However, something about that time crunch added to the movie's charm. It gave it a raw, unpolished energy that felt real and true to the neighborhood it was portraying. What is wild is that even with such a short shoot, Friday never feels rushed. It moves at its own laid-back pace, just like a real Friday on the porch. That is the magic of it. They created something timeless in under a month, making its success even more impressive. Number 19. It was filmed on a real street. This street was not some studio lot or carefully controlled Hollywood set. It was an actual residential neighborhood where real people lived. The block where Craig and Smokey spend the entire movie hanging out, dodging trouble, and watching the day unfold was a real street with real homes and real neighbors who had to deal with the madness of a movie being shot right outside their front doors. The production took over a portion of the street for the duration of the shoot, which only lasted about 20 days. The house used for Craig's home was just an ordinary house before the film crew turned it into one of the most recognizable movie locations in comedy history. The house across the street, where Smokey spends most of his time, belonged to an actual resident. Some of the people who lived on the block at the time still tell stories about watching Ice Cube and Chris Tucker filming scenes in the middle of the street, like it was just another day in the neighborhood. They were working with a small budget and limited resources, so the filmmakers could not afford to build sets or fake the look of a neighborhood. Instead, they leaned into authenticity. That decision ended up giving Friday its unique charm. The environment feels lived in because it is. The fences are chipped, the yards are uneven, and the sidewalks have cracks. It is not polished, and that is exactly what makes it perfect. The street itself became part of the story, almost like another character in the film. It is where the jokes land, where the drama unfolds, and where all the unforgettable moments happen. Number 18. The budget was super low, just $3.5 million. Given how iconic and polished Friday feels now, it is hard to believe it was made with a shockingly small budget. The entire film was shot for just $3.5 million. That might sound like a lot of money, but in movie terms, especially for something released by a major studio like New Line Cinema, it is almost pocket change. At the time, most mainstream comedies had budgets 2 or 3 times that size. Some action movies were spending 10 times that amount just on explosions. However, Ice Cube and the filmmakers made every dollar stretch. They shot the whole thing in just 20 days. They used real locations instead of sound stages. Most of the film takes place on a single street with a handful of homes and one convenience store. There were no big special effects or elaborate costumes. The biggest set piece in the whole movie might have been the fight between Craig and Debo, and even that was mostly just raw energy and good acting. The money was tight, so everyone on set had to wear multiple hats. People pitched in wherever they could. The cast and crew worked long days, sometimes under harsh conditions to make sure nothing went to waste. Even Ice Cube himself did not take a huge paycheck. He was more focused on getting the story told the way he and DJ Pooh imagined it. What's surprising is that the low budget ended up helping the movie in a strange way. It forced the team to keep things simple and honest. That sense of realness is what made Friday feel different from other comedies at the time. It was not flashy, it was not trying too hard, it was just funny, real, and straight from the neighborhood. Number 17. Chris Tucker improvised many of his lines. That might not sound surprising when you watch the movie, because his performance as Smokey is so full of wild energy, fast-talking chaos, and off-the-wall moments that it feels totally spontaneous. The truth is, a lot of it was. The script gave Tucker the basic shape of his character, but once the camera started rolling, he often threw the script out the window and just let it fly. Tucker had been a stand-up comedian before landing the role, but Friday was his first big film. Instead of playing it safe, he treated every scene like a live performance. His comedic instincts were razor-sharp, and director F. Gary Gray gave him the space to play around and explore. Some of the funniest lines in the movie were things Tucker made up on the spot, reacting to his co-stars, the moment, or just something in the environment that sparked an idea. Take the scene where Smokey is high and paranoid in the car, whispering to himself and freaking out. That entire bit was mostly improvised. The "you got knocked the fucking out" line, which became one of the most quoted movie lines of the 90s, was also something that came out naturally in the moment. Tucker's timing, voice, and physical comedy brought so much to the role that it became impossible to imagine anyone else playing Smokey. What is crazy is that Tucker never returned for the sequels. He moved on to bigger projects, but his performance on Friday left a permanent stamp on pop culture. His improvisation made Smokey feel real, unpredictable, and completely unforgettable. It was lightning in a bottle, and it made the movie legendary. Number 16. Smokey was based on a real person. This was not just some over-the-top comedy creation. Smokey was inspired by someone Ice Cube grew up with in South Central Los Angeles. A real guy who always had a joint in his hand, always had something wild to say, and always managed to get into trouble while making everybody laugh along the way. When Ice Cube and DJ Pooh sat down to write Friday, their goal was to make a movie that felt like the real South Central they knew, not the version full of drive-bys and constant fear that you saw in most movies at the time, but the version where people laughed, joked, hung out on the porch, and talked trash all day. Smokey was one of those people, a friend who was always around but never really doing anything, the one who talked a mile a minute and somehow managed to make every small thing into a big drama. Chris Tucker brought the character to life in a way no one else could. Even though Tucker added his own style and energy, the heart of Smokey came from real life. Ice Cube has said in interviews that everyone had a friend like Smokey in their neighborhood. That guy who was funny, broke, probably high, and always making you laugh even when you didn't want to. Knowing Smokey was based on a real person makes the movie feel even more genuine. It explains why his character feels so familiar, so believable, and so unforgettable. Smokey is not just a character in a comedy, he is a piece of real life that got dropped right into the middle of the screen. Number 15. Ice Cube wrote the script in just 3 weeks. That is right. The story, the characters, the iconic moments that fans still quote to this day were all created in less than a month. Ice Cube teamed up with DJ Pooh, a longtime friend and collaborator, and the two of them set out to write a movie that showed a different side of life in South Central Los Angeles. Not the gang violence and tragedy you saw in films like Boys in the Hood, but the regular, everyday life that was full of humor, weird neighbors, and porch conversations that lasted all day. Ice Cube was already a successful rapper when he decided to step into screenwriting. He had starred in movies before, but Friday was his chance to create something from the ground up. So he and DJ Pooh locked in and started writing based on their real-life experiences and the people they had grown up with. They kept the story simple, one day in the neighborhood. That simplicity gave them room to focus on the characters and the comedy. Somehow in just 21 days they had a finished script. What is even more impressive is how much heart and personality made it into the final product. The writing feels sharp, natural, and full of rhythm. It captures the way people actually talk on the block. The jokes do not feel forced, and the drama never feels heavy-handed. You can tell it came from people who had lived that life. The fact that it only took 3 weeks to write makes the success of Friday even more legendary. It shows how powerful a story can be when it comes from a real place and is told by people who actually know what they are talking about. Number 14. The movie was originally meant to be a drama. That might sound hard to believe considering how funny and lighthearted the movie feels, but when Ice Cube and DJ Pooh first started talking about making a film, their goal was to tell a more serious story about life in South Central Los Angeles. They aimed to portray the neighborhood's real struggles, including unemployment, police tension, and the pressure of growing up in a tough environment. At first, the tone was a lot heavier. However, as they started developing the script, they realized something important. While the neighborhood had its struggles, it also had a lot of humor, friendship, and weird everyday moments that never made it to the movies. People laughed, talked trash, and found ways to enjoy life even when things were hard. Ice Cube and DJ Pooh knew those stories too, because they had lived them. So they started shifting the script toward comedy. They kept the realness but added all the jokes and personality they knew from growing up around people who could make anything funny. That change in tone was a game changer. Instead of another grim hood drama, Friday became something totally different. It was a movie about the block that did not rely on shootouts or tragedy. It was about a regular guy who just lost his job, a best friend who smoked too much, and a neighborhood full of wild characters. It had heart, but it also had laughs. That balance is exactly what made the film stand out. Knowing that Friday almost turned into a serious drama makes you appreciate its comedy even more. It is a reminder that sometimes the funniest stories come from the realest places. Number 13. Chris Tucker was not the first choice for Smokey. It is almost impossible to imagine anyone other than Chris Tucker playing Smokey in Friday. His performance is so electric, so loud, so hilarious, and so full of personality that he practically steals every scene he is in. Here is the weird truth. Chris Tucker was not the first choice for the role. The original plan was for DJ Pooh, who co-wrote the script with Ice Cube, to play Smokey himself. DJ Pooh was not just a writer, he was also an actor with extensive experience in music and comedy. Since the character of Smokey was loosely based on people both he and Ice Cube knew from the neighborhood, Pooh felt confident he could bring the character to life. However, the studio was not so sure. New Line Cinema wanted someone with a bigger name or at least a stronger on-screen presence to help carry the movie. As much as DJ Pooh believed in the part, he eventually stepped aside to help the project move forward. That opened the door for casting new talent. When Chris Tucker auditioned, he brought something totally different to the role. His timing, his voice, and his natural ability to riff and improvise gave Smokey a wild energy that nobody expected. He was not just funny, he was unpredictable, sharp, and completely in sync with the spirit of the film. As soon as he stepped into the role, it was clear that no one else could do it quite like him. Looking back, it is one of those moments in movie history where everything just clicked. Chris Tucker may not have been the first choice, but he ended up being the perfect one. His performance turned Smokey into an unforgettable character and helped make Friday the comedy classic it is today. Number 12. John Witherspoon improvised the bathroom scene.
Well, you need a trade. Take a look at that paper over there on the counter there.
That scene is loud, awkward, and somehow completely hilarious. What makes that scene even better is the fact that most of it was improvised. That is right. John Witherspoon made up much of the bathroom scene on the spot, turning what could have been a quick, forgettable moment into one of the most quoted parts of the movie. The line, "Do not go in there for 35 to 45 minutes, has become a comedy classic, and it was not even in the original script. Witherspoon was known for his unique delivery, expressive face, and sharp comedic timing. He had a way of making even the most ridiculous situation feel completely believable. So when it came time to shoot the bathroom scene, director F. Gary Gray gave him the freedom to play around with it. Witherspoon ran with it, literally turning a simple scene about a man using the bathroom into something completely outrageous. The best part is that the energy of that scene feels real because it was. Ice Cube and the rest of the cast were cracking up behind the scenes. It is one of those rare movie moments that was created in the moment, not carefully written out weeks in advance. That one improvised bathroom monologue helped shape the personality of Mr. Jones and showed just how funny Witherspoon could be with just a few props and a whole lot of noise. Knowing that the scene was improvised just makes it even more impressive. It proves that sometimes the funniest lines are the ones that come from pure instinct and natural talent, and John Witherspoon had both in buckets. Number 11. The "Bye, Felicia" line was not supposed to be iconic.
Craig.
Bye, Felicia.
Remember, the line "Bye, Felicia" was never meant to be iconic in Friday. It was just a throwaway moment, a quick line tossed out during a scene that at the time seemed like nothing more than a bit of side comedy. However, somehow it grew into one of the most quoted lines in pop culture. You can hear it everywhere now, from memes and tweets to casual conversations, and most of the people saying it have no idea it started in Friday. The scene itself is quick. Felicia is a moochy neighborhood girl who's always trying to borrow something from someone. At this moment, she asks to borrow Craig's car and Smokey's joint. Without missing a beat, Ice Cube's character shuts it down with a cold, casual, "Bye, Felicia." No yelling, no dramatic pause, just pure dismissal. That's what made it so funny. It was effortless. At the time of filming, nobody thought much of it. It was just another interaction in a movie full of funny neighborhood moments. However, something about the tone, the delivery, and the vibe of that line hit just right. Over time, it took on a life of its own. "Bye, Felicia" became the go-to phrase for brushing someone off, for shutting down nonsense without a second thought. It is even more wild when you consider that Felicia was a minor character with just a few lines. Yet that one moment made her name unforgettable. The line went from a quick ad-lib in a low-budget movie to a cultural catchphrase that has lasted decades. Nobody saw it coming. Not Ice Cube, not the writers, not the actress who played Felicia, but that is the beauty of Friday. Number 10. Bernie Mac filmed all his scenes in one day. That is right. Everything you see of him on screen, the sly grin, the inappropriate sermon, the sneaky stroll out of Mrs. Parker's house, was captured in a single shooting day. It is almost unbelievable considering how much impact he had in such a short amount of screen time. Bernie Mac's role in Friday is small but unforgettable. He shows up as this shady neighborhood preacher who is more interested in the women on the block than saving souls. From the moment he steps out of his car and starts delivering his outrageous line about "The Lord is my shepherd, he knows what I want," the energy changes. He is hilarious, bold, and completely original. What makes it even funnier is how quick and sharp his delivery is, like he walked in, stole the scene, and disappeared before anyone could blink. The film was shot on a tight budget and even tighter schedule, so the production team had to be extremely efficient with the actors' time. Bernie Mac was in high demand even back then, so they scheduled all his scenes for one day. He came in, nailed every take, and left a permanent mark on the movie. That level of talent is rare. Most actors would need multiple takes and a full day to warm up. Bernie walked onto the set, turned the charm up, and delivered one of the most quoted moments in the film with barely any rehearsal. It is a testament to his natural comedic timing and screen presence. Even in just one day, Bernie Mac proved why he was one of the greats. Number 9. Most of the cast and crew stayed in the neighborhood during filming. This low-budget comedy was not made with big Hollywood trailers or fancy hotel accommodations. With a budget of only $3.5 million, the production kept things simple and real. Instead of commuting in from studios or distant sets, many of the people working on the film stayed close to the block where the story takes place. The movie was shot in a real South Central Los Angeles neighborhood. It was not a studio backlot or a recreated set. These were actual homes and streets, and the atmosphere that made Friday feel so authentic came in large part from how closely the cast and crew were embedded in that environment. They ate there, hung out between takes, and got to know the people who actually lived there. Some neighbors would even come outside to watch the filming or chat with the crew during breaks. This created a sense of community on set that you rarely find in bigger productions. Everyone was in it together, working long hours with limited resources, trying to make something special. That close-knit environment helped build the laid-back, natural vibe that runs throughout the movie. You can feel it in the performances and the chemistry between the characters. It feels like a real neighborhood because it was one. There is something refreshing about a film made this way. No glamour, no ego, just people who believed in the story they were telling. Staying in the neighborhood gave Friday an honesty and charm that helped turn it from a small project into a lasting classic. Number 8. Ice Cube made only $5,000 from acting in the film. That might sound unbelievable considering he was the star, the co-writer, and one of the main forces behind getting the movie made in the first place, but it is true. At the time, Friday was a passion project, not a big studio paycheck. Ice Cube was not focused on making money. He was focused on telling a story that felt real, funny, and true to the neighborhood he came from. The film had a tiny budget of about $3.5 million, so everyone involved had to make sacrifices to get it done. Ice Cube could have asked for more money, but instead, he chose to invest in the film's future. He wanted to prove that he could create something lasting outside of his music career and outside of the typical Hollywood system. His small paycheck was more like a symbolic gesture than a financial reward. What is wild is how huge the movie became. It started as a low-budget comedy filmed on a regular street in Los Angeles, but it turned into a cultural landmark. Ice Cube's $5,000 performance helped launch not only his film career, but also Chris Tucker's and several others. He more than made up for that tiny check in the long run, especially as the movie's success opened doors for sequels, merchandise, and new opportunities. That $5,000 salary is a reminder that sometimes it is not about chasing the biggest payday. Sometimes it is about betting on yourself and creating something that matters. Ice Cube did just that, and Friday became a classic because of it. Number 7. Chris Tucker's high-pitched voice was not fake. One of the funniest and most surprising facts about Friday is that Chris Tucker's high-pitched voice, the one that made Smokey so instantly recognizable and hilarious, was not fake at all. That was his real voice. A lot of people watching the movie for the first time thought he was putting it on just for laughs, maybe exaggerating it to match Smokey's over-the-top personality. However, the truth is, that was how Tucker actually sounded back then. Chris Tucker was in his early 20s when he filmed Friday, and his voice had a natural high tone that just happened to match the wild, rapid-fire energy of the character. The way he delivered lines like, "You got knocked the f***ing out," or "Man, I'm gonna get you high today," was all part of his natural rhythm and vocal style. It was not a performance trick, it was just who he was. That distinct voice helped set him apart not only in Friday but in his later roles too, especially in Rush Hour, where his fast-talking, high-energy delivery became his signature. What makes this fact so interesting is how much his voice contributed to Smokey's charm. It gave the character a unique edge. You could close your eyes during any scene and still know exactly who was talking. That voice, combined with his physical comedy and improvisation, turned Smokey into one of the most unforgettable characters in comedy history. Over time, Tucker's voice matured a bit, and in later roles he did not sound quite as high-pitched. However, during Friday, it was perfect, natural, unfiltered, and funny without trying too hard. That was just Tucker being Tucker. His voice was not a joke, it was part of what made Smokey so real. Number 6. The movie was inspired by a day Ice Cube spent sitting on his porch. Just one regular day in the neighborhood. No dramatic shootouts, no high-stakes action, just Ice Cube watching the world go by from the steps of his house. He noticed how much life passed by in just a few hours. Neighbors coming and going, funny conversations, loud arguments, unexpected visitors, and that familiar rhythm of a neighborhood just doing what it does. What makes this origin story so great is how relatable it is. Everyone has had those moments where they sit outside and just observe people walking their dogs, yelling from across the street, blasting music from their car, or just hanging out. Ice Cube saw the comedy in all of that, and instead of letting the moment pass, he turned it into a full movie. Friday works so well because it feels lived in. It does not try too hard to impress. It just shows you what life looks like on a regular block, all sparked by one day of watching, listening, and soaking it all in. That is where the magic started, on a porch, on a Friday. Number 5. They used practical lighting and natural sound. One of the most underrated and surprisingly weird facts about Friday is that the filmmakers mainly used practical lighting and natural sound throughout the shoot. That might not sound like a big deal at first, but in Hollywood, that choice is actually pretty rare, especially for a movie that ended up becoming a cultural classic. Most films use elaborate lighting setups and carefully controlled sound stages to get every scene looking and sounding perfect. Friday did not have that kind of luxury, so the crew leaned into what they had and made it work. Due to the film's small budget, the production team had to keep things as simple and efficient as possible. That meant using natural daylight whenever they could and relying on the sun's position to time certain scenes. If you look closely, you can see how the lighting in the movie changes naturally throughout the day. The warm glow in the morning, the harsh afternoon brightness, and the softer tones in the evening all come from real sunlight, not studio lights. The sound was handled in a similar way. Much of the sound in the film, including dogs barking in the distance, cars passing by, and people yelling from down the street, was recorded live during filming. It was the actual neighborhood noise. This gave the movie a raw, unpolished feel that worked perfectly with the story. Instead of a clean and sterile sound design, you get one that feels like you are really sitting on the porch with Craig and Smokey, listening to the world unfold around them. This low-key approach gave Friday its unique vibe. The natural lighting and ambient sound made the film feel more like a real slice of life than a polished Hollywood production. It is part of what makes the movie so relatable and timeless. Number 4. The movie's Friday setting was symbolic. The title might seem simple, just naming the day of the week everything happens, but there is actually a deeper meaning behind it. The setting of a Friday carries real weight, especially in the kind of neighborhood Ice Cube and DJ Pooh were writing about. In a way, Friday represented both freedom and pressure. Friday is the end of the work week, the moment when people finally get a break. If you have a job, it is the start of the weekend. If you do not have a job, it is still the one day when everyone else is home. Things slow down, and the block feels alive. For Craig, the main character, this Friday is different. He has just lost his job. He is trying to avoid trouble, and the entire day becomes a series of decisions that will shape what happens next in his life. That quiet, lazy Friday morning becomes something bigger. By the end of the day, Craig has stood up for himself, dealt with conflict, and found a little bit of clarity. In many neighborhoods, Friday is the day when things go down. People get paid, they party, they argue, they make bold choices. It is a day full of potential, for better or worse. That symbolism runs quietly through the film. All the tension, humor, and randomness of the story gets packed into that one day. So while it might seem like just a funny movie about two guys hanging out, the fact that it takes place on a Friday gives it a rhythm and a purpose. It is a day of reckoning, a day of release, and in Craig's case, a day of growing up. Number 3. They filmed in chronological order. That means the cast and crew shot the scenes in the exact sequence they appear in the final film, from beginning to end. In most movies, scenes are filmed out of order to save time and money. A production might shoot all the scenes in one location at once, even if those scenes take place at different points in the story. However, Friday did the opposite. The film was set almost entirely on one street and had a tight 20-day shooting schedule. Filming in order actually made sense. It allowed the actors to grow with their characters as the day unfolded. Chris Tucker and Ice Cube could ease into their chemistry in the morning scenes and slowly build the tension and energy as the story progressed. Filming in chronological order also helped the production stay organized. The lighting changed naturally throughout the day, and since the story takes place during a single Friday, that flow matched perfectly with the way they were shooting. It added a level of realism and rhythm to the movie that you can actually feel when you watch it. The day feels like it is really happening. Number 2. The movie got mixed reviews. At first, when Friday first hit theaters in 1995, not everyone saw it as the instant classic it later became. The movie got mixed reviews from critics. Some praised its laid-back style and humor, while others dismissed it as just another stoner comedy with no real depth. It is kind of funny now, considering how many people quote lines from Friday without even thinking about it, but at the time, the film did not blow critics away. Part of the reason was that Friday did not fit the mold of what studios and critics were used to seeing in a movie about South Central Los Angeles. Earlier films like Boys in the Hood and Menace to Society had painted the area with a heavy, dramatic brush, focusing on violence, poverty, and survival. Friday came in with a totally different energy. It was slow, funny, strange, and full of characters that felt more like your neighbors than movie villains or heroes. That threw some people off. Over time, the audience told a different story. Word of mouth spread, VHS sales exploded, and Friday found its true home in living rooms, barbershops, and dorm rooms. The critics might have missed it at first, but the people never did. Number 1. The movie was almost rated NC-17 because of the weed. This was not because of violence, language, or anything too explicit. It was because of the weed. That's right. The film's casual and comedic portrayal of marijuana use nearly pushed it into a rating that would have made it extremely difficult to release in theaters. At the time, the Motion Picture Association of America was particularly strict about how substances were depicted on screen, especially if the film seemed to celebrate or normalize their use. In Friday, marijuana is a constant presence. Smokey, played by Chris Tucker, is high in almost every scene. There is no major lesson about substance use, and no real consequences are shown. It is played for laughs, and that alone raised red flags during the ratings process. An NC-17 rating would have been a disaster. Many theaters would not show NC-17 films, and major advertisers would avoid them entirely. The filmmakers pushed back, arguing that the tone of the movie was comedic and lighthearted, not promoting substance use as something dangerous or glamorous. Eventually, the film was rated R instead. Looking back, it is hard to imagine Friday being seen as too extreme, especially compared to what gets shown today. However, at the time, the weed jokes almost kept the movie from even making it to theaters. It is a weird reminder of how much things have changed, yet Friday still managed to break through. Which of these facts is more fascinating? Share in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more interesting facts about your favorite movies. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.